Integrated Support Program for Sexual and Reproductive Health, commonly known as the ISP program, is a program that is being implemented by, amongst other partners, the United Nations Population Fund, in conjunction with the government of Zimbabwe and civil society organizations. And one of the organizations that we are working with to engage traditional leaders is the Women in Law in Southern Africa.
Women in Law in Southern Africa was formed on the basis of conducting action research against laws and policies that do not promote the rights of women. And in a country like Zimbabwe, where unemployment is at a rate of 80%, most women cannot afford the formal court system. And it was also noted that even court personnel are also gender insensitive to the needs of women and the rights of women as they want to access justice. So Wilsa discovered that most women stated that they prefer the informal justice system, that is the traditional courts, because they are convenient and nearby the homesteads, and also because they are open courts which allow women to express themselves in vernacular language that they feel most comfortable with.
People deep in the rural areas have got a lot of confidence in our administration, and referring them to the magistrates' courts to them becomes somehow like denial, or becomes somewhat like we are not accepting them. And again, the other reason that they cite is that when you go to the magistrate's court, the perpetrator will be sent to prison or fined depending on the level of offense, and the person who has been offended will not benefit in any form.
So Wilsa was triggered to work with traditional leaders because women preferred the traditional court system, and Wilsa noted that these court systems, though women respect and prefer them in the rural areas, they also need to be equipped with the capacity to handle gender-based violence cases.
I'll give you an example of cases that are at times brought to my office, where there are people complain that they brought a case to the attention of the traditional leader, and the way or the manner in which that case was handled did not go down well with them. So those are the areas. That's an indication that there are areas where we actually need to capacitate our traditional leaders.
When we look at the Constitution, it recognizes a specific role for the traditional leaders, but we are saying that the Constitution binds everyone. Everyone in Zimbabwe is supposed to conform to the provisions of the Constitution. So when we look at traditional leaders, we are saying that these traditional leaders should also uphold the Constitution. So whatever laws that they are implementing or that they are enforcing through the traditional courts, these laws should not go against the Constitution.
UNFPA has been the funding partner for Women in Law in Southern Africa for this integrated support program we are rolling out in the 13 districts in Zimbabwe. And our training has been in 2 sessions, where the first training session, we wanted to gender sensitize these traditional codes on what is gender, what does gender equality mean, what does gender stereotyping mean.
A man is the head of the family. Gender. It's who agree, yes, Chief, what do you think?
That word came from God.
Okay, Language is biblical.
Yes, because Ranas understand the difference in gender and sexuality. We are saying biological. Pane male organ, the head of the family.
You find if the father is not there or he has died, for you to see it's not really biological, the mother will become a single parent and the head of that house. Or these days we have child-headed households where both parents have died and children are now the parent of that house. So it's an issue of our culture, which is society, which is gender that says that. But it's not biological.
And we also wanted them to understand the aspect of gender mainstreaming so that they are able to actually include women within their courts and see it as an empowering process for the whole process of justice.
This is why we are doing this assessment. What we are doing, are we doing it in accordance to the law, or it's a practice And is it promoting gender equality as the Constitution is saying, or it's not?
Five assessors.
Five assessors and then a secretary.
Then a secretary.
Then the chief.
And the chief. Seven.
To go now to my courts, have women, but they don't even have. And Vanamo Bacho, they are also still in the minority. Papa Wandachi, Vanumi. Of which areas are in terms of gender.
The training also focused on gender-based violence laws, that is the Domestic Violence Act and the Constitution of Zimbabwe, which now currently enshrines gender equality at a 97% rate.
But the problem is, umuntu ongumama uyachata kufanele iwe wandithi unova kumashonari anditi ovoshatwa kuishe bomashonari anditi kuishe ipo kunoendana kumandebere uchivhana kwamtana
And it was important that traditional leaders understand that it's coming from the supreme law, which is the Constitution, and it is not just a Women in Law in Southern Africa initiative, but we are actually feeding into the national process of disseminating information on the Constitution.
We want to touch upon recognition of equality of all human beings,
And the state and all institutions and agencies of the government at every level must take particular measures to ensure that women have access to resources, including land, on the basis of equality with men.
The second training session then focused on the actual roles and duties and functions of traditional court officials, that is the Customary Law and Local Courts Act, which outlines the jurisdiction of the traditional courts, which was very critical for them to understand that village heads do not have court systems, so to speak, as that was usually the trend, that the village heads would also try matters and deal with civil cases. Yet, according to law, it's the headman's court and the chief's court, so that our cases are properly adjudicated at that level.
There are only two recognized courts at customary law level.
And we also then sensitize them on the Traditional Leaders Act as well, so that they understand how best they can include issues of gender-based violence within the current existing structures like the ward assemblies and the village assemblies, which are platforms in which communities come together and they are able to sensitize them on gender-based violence issues and even invite technical expertise to actually talk to the people about GBV.
Sometimes have villages down 3 or 2, but
even though we are confident that our traditional leaders are able to discharge their duties as judicial officers, what we are hoping to do with this initiative is to make sure that they understand the survivor-centered approach and that they are able to use this approach in the discharge of their duties as traditional leaders.
We would then assist them in understanding the survivor-centered approach, which is a holistic approach to gender-based violence, where they have to understand the need of the 4 services, which are the shelters, the need for the medical assistance to one who is facing physical abuse, the need for counseling to those who are facing psychological and emotional abuse, and the need for the prosecution and the adjudicating of matters at the traditional courts to actually ensure that perpetrators are brought to book.
Because all along I was doing whatever I was doing, but I didn't know that I was wrong. Anyway, I was thinking that I was doing the right thing to the people, somewhere admitting all those things that I was doing, but now I know what to do and I'm happy. And I thank you very much for coming here and teaching all us these things, spending your time, coming down here, telling us all these things. We're very happy to hear that.
As Women in Law in Southern Africa, we always engage in what we call a participatory methodology approach, whereby we ensure that the participants are actually involved in the actual trainings and they are actually appreciating and also airing their views so that we can use their views to measure if they are actually understanding the trainings and they are actually at a position to implement what we are training them.
Let's say suppose there is that penetration that you're talking about, and it has been caused by a woman on a man.
Yes.
Why is it not called rape? Why is it given a different name?
Kube le community court epresident over the chief.
Yes.
Court la thina satrainwayo abanje so kuba lama assessors 5 kodwa kusithi uhlala le 2 at a time.
We're talking to traditional leaders. These are people that are respected in the communities. These are people who are elderly, they've got families. And so if you use the top-bottom approach, it will not work, there will be resistance. So it's very, very important to make the traditional leaders feel that they are part and parcel of the process.
Ask me ask questions, give me some activities, it at least helps us than you talking and talking, but us we're talking too. So it we're sharing, it was like a self.
So the group works, we're actually focusing on ensuring that our participants are participating in the trainings that we are taking place and to also ensure that they actually have something to take back home through the feedback process of the group sessions.
Then the plan what? My plans what? Zifuna kudrilla amabhoko 5-4.
Kubulisa ama-issues iwayo e-gender mainstreaming ne-gender based violence, it's an added advantage. Nenge matokwanisa kuita zvisina kuitwa nemamwechi mawards.
Starting we write out all summons to the defendant. Always 3. Starting we keep all records for all courts.
So we have actually distributed the actual acts of parliament, the Domestic Violence Act, the Customary Law and Local Courts Act, the Constitution of Zimbabwe and the Traditional Leaders Act. And we have given them pamphlets on the Domestic Violence Act, which are in comic style that allows them as elderly people. You find our traditional courts are elderly. The cartoon comic style can actually help them understand better what we are saying when we say emotional abuse, when we say psychological abuse, which some of these terms are new to them. The distribution of materials is very key to actually ensuring that information is disseminated, distributed and shared not only to the participants but even to the communities out there. And you find that these participants who are quieter during sessions, we are able to measure their knowledge through the pre and post evaluation process. We conduct a questionnaire to each participant before the workshop starts to assess their levels of knowledge, and then after the training sessions we give them the post-evaluation questionnaires, the same as the pre-evaluation questions, to ensure if there is a change, if they have learned something. So each participant, we are still able to measure their knowledge levels at the end of each training workshop.
Basically, what we have learned here is quite different what we have been doing. That means we have a great change when we go back and teach the other setup.
Women in Law in Southern Africa, as part of the activities that it has been doing with training traditional court officials, it initiated the court monitoring process, which is a monitoring and evaluation tool to ensure that these training sessions actually helping these people and are they able to implement the trainings that we have been giving them.
Ndichataura chokwadi pamberi pachief takamera
musati mapa munhu $50
ndingakapundisibwebo lese
abantu abanganani.
ndinotadza age.
So in Kai, Wilson noted that the chief, who was a woman there, was actually able to outline the Domestic Violence Act and identify the abuses that were being outlined by the woman who was being accused of witchcraft.
uyanenwe abe nguyayenza la izinto zonke abafo abazalwa labo angababonisi kodwa alwe lami ukufuna ukungidlala.
Umama uhlukuluziwe ngoba ufakazi bangikhona uhlukuluzwe konke lemuli yakhe, uthethisiwe verbal, emotional, psychological, konke uphakathi khonapho. So kunengi okusadingakalayo okunjengokuthi kade kuxoxwa kuWills ukuthi kube le counseling, lot of counseling kibo bonke the whole family.
However, the court monitoring process also involves assessing the recording process of their cases, and Women and Law noted that the recording process, there is no sex disaggregated data in their court files and in their court record books, which is critical if we are going to be analyzing issues from a gender perspective.
Panyaya dzegender tikukwanisa kuona kuti plaintiff is it male or female, defendant is it male or female. Saka maybe zvinoichida kuti secretary vazombonyora kumberi so that munoziva kuti ine month ka vanhu vakauya vachicomplaina around gender based violence vakadzi vanga vari 5 kana kuti varume vanga vari, then maperpetrate, so that marecords achanatsoita clear in terms of gender.
When you go to a village setup, people rely mostly on their father, that is the village head, and let alone their chief. So these trainings are very useful, and we are hoping for more trainings in terms of the legal part of it, and also maybe an appreciation that the laws will also put in vernacular, and in the vernacular that is also relevant to this district. And our wish would be that some of it also be written in Kalanga, because this is also a Kalanga district. They speak Ndebele, but it's mostly Kalanga. So I find it very valid.
My plea may be to government and development partners in government is that when we talk of culture and domestic violence, I think before we conclude, it's important to engage and maybe involve the communities involved or the traditional leadership to find out if that is a form of culture in their practice, other than underlining and accepting that this is culture or that is culture, because some of these things that are fueling domestic violence are not culture, hence why we are having a lot of hardships in trying to bring these cases down.
We have also noted that there is need for more financial support in regards to carrying out these programs, because 13 districts is not a good representative of the many districts that we have in Zimbabwe. It would be more effective if WILSA can go into more districts in Zimbabwe and actually be able to ascertain if these findings are accurate. We are also even appealing to the Chiefs Council that we need to actually promote more women to be represented in the court systems, because that came out as a serious gap in the composition of the courts in all the 13 districts, where only in 2 districts, in Matebele and South Matobo and Kai, we had women who are actually chiefs and some who are actually headmen. But in other 11 districts that are in the Mashonaland region, there were no women, even at the court system as assessors or secretaries, which is a serious concern when we are looking at our constitution, which is hammering on the issues of gender equality in all